Hi, everyone. This is Kathy. I'm Kathy from Sag Moraine Native Plant Community, and I am joined again today by Lexi Neubauer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
And we are bringing you part two from a previous presentation we did last week on preventing landscape weeds with beautiful native ground covers. Anybody who gardens or puts any plants in their landscape knows that weeding is a huge chore and a problem that we're all struggling with right now, especially with all the rain we've been having in many parts of the country. And as we pointed out in the previous presentation, we are, we talked about the different types of ways that you can prevent weeds in your landscape. And we feel that the most effective and enduring is with beautiful native ground covers. But if you want to see more of that, please refer back to our previous part one of this presentation. But we're going to be talking today more solely about these native ground covers that will help prevent landscape weeds. And a couple points that I want to make before we start with, and these are brought up by some great comments we've had, and thank you all for engaging and making comments. We love to hear your feedback. The idea of ground cover, we always think that it needs to be a very low plant, a very ground hugging plant. And that's what mostly we picture as a ground cover. And whereas that can be definitely true, sorry everyone, where that can definitely be true, really ground covers can be any height. A ground cover can be 6 to 12 inches like the plants that we're going to be talking about today, but a ground cover can also be 1 to 2 feet. And if you like the look, a ground cover could be 3 to 4 feet. The main thing that a ground cover needs is dense enough foliage near the ground to block out sun and block out weeds. So you don't want a tall, stocky plant that lets a lot of light through. You need a foliage-rich plant, but it can be of any height. So that is really your taste. If it's closer to you, you may prefer the very low. But if it's something that you have a big yard and you have a natural area in the back of the yard and it's a far distance from where you sit and entertain, maybe you want some of these taller ground covers in the background so that you can see them and they're more impressive from where you spend most of your time. The other point I wanted to make is, why are native ground covers more effective than many of the ground covers that us gardeners have dealt with for years? For example, some of our ajugas and our non-native sedums and so on. Because I used all of those. I've been gardening for years and I was using all of those before I was introduced to native plants a few years ago. And it all comes down to how aggressive they are, how effective they are, and how long-lived they are. And with, on our website, the Sag Moraine website, we have a tool called our Native Plant Selector. And on that tool, we vet plants that are overly aggressive, overly tall, plants that are meant more to be in the prairie and not in a smaller suburban landscape. So because some native plants are very aggressive by nature in how they spread with underground rhizomes, especially if they don't have very strong competition. So that's why we vet plants so that people know that any plant that is on our native plant selector is conducive and well behaved to be in a small suburban landscape. That being said, if you live in an area where you have a real problem with some kind of an invasive weed, or you have a very large area to cover, you may need something more on the more aggressive side than somebody who has a 1/4 acre lot. If you have a 3-acre lot, you might need something that's going to move a little faster for you. So there's different needs out there. Benjamin Volt, I don't know if any of you have read any of his books, but he's a wonderful author and knows very much on the subject of native plants and working with native plants in the landscape. And he rates plants 1 to 4. A native plant that's a 1 is one that is very kind of timid and well behaved, and it's pretty much just going to sit and stay right where you plant it and do its thing. Then you go up to a 4, and the 4s are the ones that are the most aggressive, and they have, you know, underground runners that are very aggressive at spreading, or they seed themselves very prolifically. So his concept is you don't want to plant a 1 with a 4 because the 4 is going to choke out the 1. You want to plant 1s with 2s, and you want to plant 3s with 4s. Now, when it comes to trying to prevent weeds, some weeds are very aggressive, and we can't plant 1 native plants with weeds. We may need to plant a 3 or a 4 native plant with weeds, or a place that's very prone to excessive weeds. And another thing is the length of the length that a plant thrives. Most of these native plants, because they're native to the area, they do very well in our soil, they do very well in our climate, they're meant to be here. You put them somewhere and you put them in the right location, they're going to be around a very long time. They're going to thrive. This is where they're meant to be. So they're going to be dependable. I know from my years of gardening with non-native plants or cultivars, they're not as dependable. They might thrive for 2, 3, maybe 5 years, but they often start to dwindle. So native plants, if you're really looking for to really build a ground cover in areas, native plants by and large are going to be longer lived or longer thriving if they are in the right location. So with that said, we're going to get into more specifics about some specific native plants that can be used as beautiful ground covers. And the ones we're going to be talking about today are plants that do hug the ground that are only 6 to 12 inches tall. Before I turn it over to Lexi to give an overview of some of those plants, I'm going to ask you all to please, if you like the content that Sagmarine brings, please subscribe. That will really help get our information out to more people. And I'm going to turn it over to Lexi.
All right, so today we're going to be covering the lowest native ground cover plants, and these grow up to 1 foot tall, so 6 to 12 inches, like Kathy said. We're going to have a part 3 and a part 4 of this presentation. There are just so many plants that we want to cover. So part 3 is going to be 1 to 2 feet tall, and then part 4 is going to be 2 to 4 feet tall. So we can really address all of those different situations and needs, and maybe you can experiment with some that are varying heights to fill in different areas. So today we're going to be going over Pennsylvania sedge, field pussytoes, wild ginger, prairie smoke, foam flower, also my background today, wild strawberry, wild petunia, blue violet, wild stonecrop, and purple poppy mallow.
One is more beautiful than the other. So when we're talking about these plants, we're going to talk about a few things. Now, as a rule with native plants, you don't necessarily talk about the hardiness zone because you were trying to get plants that are native to a certain area. But as our climate shifts and so on, and I mean, it's not a bad idea to keep in mind the zoning of these plants. So we'll be talking about what zone they're hardy in, you know, what areas they will do well in. And we're referring to this plant hardiness zone map. And like, as you can see where, you know, we are we're in zone 5B, but just to the, or actually are we in zone 6? We're in zone 6A, but just a little bit to the west of us, we're in the green right by Lake Michigan. But just to the west of us in part of our area, you can see it switches to a 5B. So we will be referring to zones. But the most important thing to consider with these plants is where they are native to, and we'll be showing the map of BONAP, the Biota of North America program that creates this map that shows where all of these different plants are native to. And you can see that these are in the green areas is where they are native. If it's dark green, it's present in the state. And if it's light green, it's present in that county and it's native. So the light green is really what we're gauging whether or not it's native on, because it is native to that area. First one, Lexi.
All right, Pennsylvania sedge. This is a beautiful plant. You can plant it in clusters. It makes a beautiful, dense, growing low ground cover. This one likes part shade to shade. A sedge looks like a grass, but it's actually a different species. So the sedges have a solid stem, whereas grasses have a hollow stem. And they just kind of branch out with their leaves a little bit differently. But beautiful one to group again in clusters. It likes dry to medium soil, 6 inches to 1 foot tall. This blooms in April, May, and June, and it has these little spikes that kind of shoot up with a little brownish green flower. And it's blooming in April, May, and June, so it's one of our first plants to bloom in the spring. It will spread by rhizomes, which are those underground tentacles that the, the plants send out. And this one is good in zones 3 to 7 and native to the northeastern US. And we wanted to show this picture. I think we showed it in our last presentation, but how beautiful this can be when you mass plant Pennsylvania sedge or even any of the other sedges. This one works particularly well under trees. So I've seen this done in a couple different places, but once you have all of these together, it just has a beautiful carpet-like effect. And it mimics the look of a traditional lawn, but has so much more ecological benefit than a lawn would have. So again, we're providing habitat for our pollinators and for our birds who like to live in sedges and grasses. And we're also protecting the integrity of the soil, returning nutrients to the soil and keeping the moisture in. And here's our native map. You can see it's native to the northeastern US and really up in the upper Midwest too.
Are you still seeing my screen, Lexi?
Yep, everything's working fine.
Perfect, because I'm not seeing you and I lost power for a minute and luckily you didn't even know it.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the next one we're going to go over is field Pussytoes. This one, it's just such a pretty little thing. It has a very dense foliage at the ground, hugging the ground, which is how it, helps prevent weeds. But then it sends up these little spikes that get to be maybe 6 inches tall with little fuzzy white flowers on the end, and that's why it's called Pussytoes. It is, a very tough plant. It likes full to part sun and medium to dry soil. It blooms again April, May, and June, and it spreads by stolons, which you did a little research on that, Lexi. What is the difference between a stolon and a rhizome?
Yeah, stolons and runners, which a couple of these plants actually do runners too. They're typically above the ground, whereas the rhizomes are underground. And either one of these helps the plants pollinate, or I'm sorry, not pollinate, colonize, colonize quickly to fill in all of your different areas. So rhizomes are a little bit thicker and more robust compared to the stolons and runners, but don't let that dissuade you. The stolons can be just as effective.
Okay, hardy in zones 3 to 7 and native to the northeastern US. So here you can see its native range in the light green, but it has moved over to some of the darker green, or people have planted it there. Look at the cool butterflies, the American painted lady that this is the host plant for. I'm hoping I'll get more though. I love those butterflies. They're just beautiful. So this is the host plant for our American painted lady.
And it can be hard to identify this one because when it lands, you'll see the underside of the wing has this pink and like different colors, but then when it's open, it's, the browns and the oranges. And then this is a picture of the caterpillar for the American painted lady. So just some little things to look out for if you
Well,
go
and
ahead
you're
and
right.
plant
And
this.
I do have field Pussytoes, and I did see one of these butterflies in my yard about a week ago. And at first I was wondering if it was a different species of butterfly because I saw the little circles on it. But then I realized those circles were on the under part of the wing, as you can see in that picture where the wings are closed. And then I realized that it was a painted lady that I was looking at.
So exciting when you see a butterfly. Just
Yeah, it
love it.
is.
Oh, one other thing on field Pussytoes is that it is deer and rabbit resistant. So for those of you who have any issues, you can maybe try this plant.
Nice.
Okay, this is just a beautiful classic woodland plant. This is wild ginger. It usually gets between 6 to 1 foot tall, but no more than that. And it likes part shade to shade. Since it is a woodland flower, it likes medium to dry or even moist soil, but it likes shaded, moist, well-drained sites. It can form a solid ground cover. This one is also deer resistant, and it actually has edible roots. I'm not quite sure if they taste exactly, like ginger root, but be fun to try that one day. This blooms in May to June, and you can't see it in this picture, but there's actually this flower on the underside of the leaves, and it's really beautiful. It spreads by rhizomes, so those underground tentacles, and it will be good in zones 3 to 8 and native to the eastern US. And this one is the larval host plant for the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. So, it's really amazing. Even these small little plants can have such a huge ecological benefit. So this is a picture of its caterpillar. If you see the caterpillar in your yard, know that sometime soon you're going to have one of these beautiful creatures visiting and flying around.
I think I had one of those in my yard the other day, and I was looking at it and I'm thinking, is that a black swallowtail? It looks a little bit different than a black swallowtail, but maybe it was the pipevine swallowtail. I'm not sure. I do have wild ginger.
It could be.
It is so fun to plant these things and see them come. It really is amazing.
And when you see a new butterfly that you've never seen before, it's like the best day ever.
It is. So here, this one is just such a unique plant, prairie smoke. I like how we go back and forth. This one's for sun, this one's for shade. There's really ground covers everywhere, and for any location. And this one does well in dry to medium soil. It gets 6 inches tall. Again, a dense mat of foliage at the ground to block out weeds, block out the sun. But then it sends up these little 6-inch stalks that get little flowers, but those flowers really shine when they open up and those seed heads open up and it looks like this pink fluffy smoke, therefore prairie smoke. It blooms in May and June, and it is it is hardy in zones 3 to 6. So it's a very cold loving plant, and it does spread by rhizomes. I do want to mention that as we're talking about all of the plants that we have spoken about so far are very good ground covers to prevent weeds in a normal garden area in a regular size suburban urban yard in a small section here, a medium section there. When there's one that is more aggressive, that if you need, if you need something more powerful if you have a place that is already struggling with invasives, or you have a very large area to cover and a terrible weed problem, we will mention that at that time. But anyway, this one spreads by rhizomes, and interestingly, this one is in much different range. This one is native to the western US and the upper Midwest. So usually we're in the Chicago area here, we're usually like combined with the eastern US, but here this plant is from west to here and then very far up into Canada. So this is like a very hardy, cold tolerant, just beautiful native ground cover.
Another cool thing about this plant is that the leaves actually can stay evergreen throughout the winter.
That's a good point.
Mine stayed green. Did yours stay green too?
They did. I mean, because we had such a mild winter, and I just planted my prairie smoke last year and it's done amazing for 1 year, it really has, you know, gotten larger and spread, and it's just beautiful. And yes, it did stay green last year. I don't know if it's because we had such a relatively mild winter or if it'll do it every year here, but that it's always nice to see, a touch of green in January and February, right?
Exactly. And in the fall, it'll turn a little bit red on the leaves too, so it'll give you some fall interest. So really a plant for all seasons. I'm just so impressed by this one. All right, so foam flower, again, my background for today. This is actually related to the heuchera plant, which a lot of us might know as coral bells. That's the cultivar of heuchera, but they are related. And if you actually plant them together, they can like cross germinate. And I'm not exactly sure what they would do, but you can tell that the structure of the plant is kind of similar because it's got this low mounded foliage and then it shoots up these really beautiful flowers. And like heuchera, this is good for shade to part shade, likes medium soil, gets about to 1 feet tall, including the blooms, and it'll bloom early in the spring. And it's one of the most beautiful, showiest flowers in the spring, blooming in May and June. And the flowers are this white pink color. This one spreads by both rhizomes and stolons, and it's native to the eastern US. And there you can see a picture of it kind of top down to see that really beautiful variegated foliage plus the flowers there. And then according to our research, this one actually can stay evergreen in the more southern parts of its range. So again, like prairie smoke, you might get the added benefit of keeping that foliage green over the winter.
And interestingly, as you can see, this is one that is not native to our area. It is not invasive, and so it is certainly fine to plant here, but the actual native range of this one is a little bit further east of us. Okay, so we said that we would let you know if there was one that was, if you have a real problem area and you're really fighting some nasty weeds and you want to put something in that really is strong, robust, and can really duke it out with some of the more aggressive weeds. This is a great choice, wild strawberry. It's also a keystone plant in our area, so it has, and for those of you who haven't seen some of our other presentations, a keystone plant is one that has the greatest impact, positive impact on our local environment. And so there's a lot of species of butterflies and moths that feed on wild strawberry. There is, the birds like it. It provides good habitat for birds. So it is just, a powerhouse plant for our environment. And it is one that can duke it out with some of our, nasty weeds. So if you have a large area or you have a very weed prone area, this is one you may want to try. It likes full apart sun and dry soil. You don't have to be watering this all the time. It's, very almost like plant and forget. It only gets to be 3 to 6 inches tall. He really cascades over the ground. And it blooms in April, May, June, little white flowers. If you have a strawberry plant that gets little yellow flowers, that is not the native, and that is actually considered invasive in our area. So and this one will get little strawberries on it that, yes, they are edible. And so they taste pretty good if you can get to them before the birds do. Grows in zones 3 to 9, nice range. Pretty much anybody in the country can use this one. And as we said, it does spread by runners and it's native to the entire US. Let's look at that map. Look at that green map.
Wow,
So,
beautiful.
and I can see it going up into a lot of Canada. So for a stubborn area, and just to help our ecosystem, this is a good choice. So, and look at all these different moths and butterflies that it is the host plant for. So we can see why it's a keystone plant. The grizzled skipper, sorry, the purple lined sallow, and the crocus geometer. That guy's cute. You can see his eyes. So what a great plant. You have a lot
Yeah,
of this planted, don't you, Lexi?
I'm obsessed with this plant. If you've got a problem area, this is your go-to plant. It grows so quickly. It can fill in, within a season. Excuse me. We do have a short video that I filmed in my garden showing this plant in action. So go ahead and check that out. It's on our channel under shorts. Oh, and one other thing about wild strawberry is like prairie smoke and some of these other ones that we're looking at, the foliage will turn kind of red in the fall and just have that nice fall interest.
Good point.
Okay,
Another one
another
of your
favorite.
favorites.
Oh, I love them all.
Lexi has a lot of favorites, everyone.
You can't help it. These plants are just awesome to work with and see every day and visit in your garden. This is wild petunia, Ruella humilis, and it loves full sun, medium to dry soil. It starts out kind of short, but can grow up to 12 inches tall. It's going to bloom June, July, and August, and it has this beautiful purple flower. This one is hardy in zones 4 to 9, and it spreads by self-seeding. It's native to the central and eastern US, and it'll attract hummingbirds, bees, butterflies. It can be rated as kind of more of an aggressive. Kathy, your research said that it's really kind of a little bit more on the aggressive side, but if it finds a
Yes.
spot that it likes, it can spread, and a lot of us need that. It's also the larval host plant for two extremely beautiful butterflies, the common buckeye butterfly and the white peacock butterfly. I have yet to see these. I hope to see them sometime soon, but really an outstanding plant. And look at that native range. It's a good chunk of the country in central and eastern US.
And I know we're talking about native ground covers, but I also have heard from many sources that this is a plant that will do really well in containers. So if you want to plant some natives, but you do live in, or somebody who lives in a condo or a townhome and can only do container planting, I just wanted to mention that this is one that I've been told does very well in containers.
We'll have to do some tests.
I know, that's my plan. Okay, blue violet. So this is kind of controversial because a lot of people consider this a weed and then they just pull it out. And it is a native plant. It is our native violet. So it is not a weed, but remember our definition of weed is just a plant that's not valued where it is growing. And people don't value this plant, but this plant has a lot of ecosystem value. And it's one of those ground covers that can be a little more on the aggressive side, so it can duke it out if you are dealing with a lot of non-native or non-native, ecosystem supporting weeds. This is one that you could put in to compete with them. It likes full sun, partial sun, or full shade, so it will grow pretty much anywhere. Medium to dry soil, so I guess the only place this won't grow is in a swamp, right? 4 inches tall, little, a short little plant that's just going to hug the ground. Blooms in April, May, and June, but it keeps that tight, large foliage at the ground level. Again, that's how it blocks the sun and blocks the germination of weed seeds and so on. It's native to zones 3 to 9, and it spreads by both self-seeding and rhizomes. It is native to the central and eastern US, as we'll see right here on the map. And look at all of these butterflies that this is the larval host plant for. So when you're pulling this violet like it's a weed out of your lawn or your landscape, look at these many butterflies that their very existence is reliant on that plant.
Yeah, and you can always take those blue violets out of your lawn and transplant them to where you need ground cover. So go shopping in your lawn for native plants. It's a great way to get free plants and free ground cover, and just move it to somewhere that it will be beneficial, and that you need it for ground cover, and these butterflies need it for their eggs. All right, so wild stonecrop. This is such a beautiful plant, sedum ternatum. So this is our native sedum. There's lots of cultivars of sedum, but this one is going to have the most ecological benefit. It likes shade to part shade, medium to moist soil. It only gets 6 inches to 1 feet tall, and it blooms with this beautiful white flower in May to June. It's hardy in zones 4 to 7, and this one's going to spread by rhizomes under the ground, and it's native to the eastern US. This one's not really classified as aggressive. It's more moderate, but it can spread to form a dense mat over time. And it just creates this beautiful effect and is great next to a walkway or some kind of rocks or in a wall. Really gorgeous option.
All right, and finally we have purple poppy mallow. This is supposed to be a really tough plant in full sun. Really can withstand very dry soil. Really you don't need to water this at all once those roots get established. But it does like full sun, and it will grow in medium to dry soil. It is a pretty effective ground cover for an average area, probably not like wild strawberry or violet that is going to really be able to duke it out against some of your super aggressive weeds, but it is an effective ground cover at preventing weeds. It blooms in June, July, and August, and it's hardy in zones 4 to 10. It's a big range. It spreads by self-seeding, and it has a long taproot. So I guess that's why it's just so drought tolerant. And it's native to the central US, not the eastern, not the western, just the central US. And it is the host plant for the gray hair streak and the checkered skipper. So again, another really important plant to support our native butterflies and moths that we've talked in other presentations about how important those butterflies and moths and their caterpillars are to our birds, to our food chain, to our ecosystem, and to our environment.
All right, and that wraps up our presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It really helps us get the message out. And take a look at our website at sagmarine.org. Next week, we'll be coming back to you with another live stream, part 3, about preventing landscape weeds with native ground covers. And we're going to be covering plants that are from 1 to 2 feet high. So we hope to see you then.